Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Let me see here. We're on deck. So the purpose of this is to follow up with what we did in class today, where we're going through the this application, right? We're applying IRAC to the logical reasoning section of the test, and so I just want to demonstrate how you learn this stuff. So I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna go to what we did. I'm going to go to prep test 19 in the digital exam. So I'm in section 2, and I'm just going to do a few questions. And just again, just try to demonstrate how you learn how to learn this way. Okay, so I'm going to look at question number 1. Now remember, the goal is to form in your mind the contours of the answer. And when you practice this, and it will take practice, but when you practice this, you're going to find a bunch of occasions on which you no longer have to read past the answer choice. And let me demonstrate. So question number 1, you're looking over on the top right-hand side because you want the issue first. That again, the rule is the argument that's on the left-hand side of my screen. The issue is what I care about initially, and the issue here is I'm informed that the director's argument for rejecting the management consultant's proposal is most vulnerable to criticism on which of the following grounds. So this is raising a flaw issue. It's saying that with what I'm going to read, there's a flaw. So I'm just looking for that flaw in this rule, which is the argument. Okay, so that's the only reason I'm reading this, right, is to identify a flaw. Okay, and what do I have here from the director? The director informs me our management consultant proposes that we reassign staff so that all employees are doing both what they like to do and what they do well. And I stop, it's a period. And I understand every word, and the writer is writing to be understood. I got it. I got it. So we have a proposal that's designed to uh, have employees do what they like to do and also what they do well. Got it. Next sentence. This, she says, will, quote, increase productivity by fully exploiting our available resources, close quotes. Okay, so the second sentence informs me that there's an impact, there's a practical impact from this proposal, right? Which is that employees will be more productive uh, in that they will be more fully exploiting, that is, using um, the available resources. Okay, I got that. Final sentence. But so, and again, these were two premises I had. That first sentence, I'm being informed, right? I'm being informed that this is the proposal. In the second sentence, I'm being informed of what she says, right? That this will increase productivity by fully exploiting our available resources, meaning you're getting the most out of your workforce. So given that those are two, whether you want to say premises, facts, evidence, it's very likely conclusions coming. And sure enough. But Ace Manufacturing has a long-standing commitment not to exploit its workers. Okay. Well, that's yet another piece of evidence, right? We have this policy not to exploit our workers. I got that. And here comes the conclusion. Therefore, implementing her recommendations would cause us to violate our own policy. Well, no, you wouldn't be violating your own policy because the word exploit in the context of how it was used is not something to be avoided. So again, in terms of the legal issue, this is simply language driven. That in the description where you're exploiting your available resources, that is meant by the author by to say, well, meaning we're getting the most out of our workers. And how are you doing that? We're getting the most out of our workers because we have them doing what they like to do and what they're good at. So in that context, the word exploit is not a negative word. And this is, you can call it the fallacy of equivocation, but it's not it's not formal logic. It's in law. This is all about language, right? So the language is you want to be aware when you read textually, you see the word exploit is used twice. So that's going to be the answer, and there can only be one candidate answer to every flaw issue. So I look at A. Failing to distinguish two senses of a key term. I'm done. That's the answer. Goodbye. Because that's what it does. The term they're referring to is exploit, and the two distinct senses are, one is in the negative context and one's in the positive context. A is the answer. Now, I'm going to continue past here. I'm going to go to the next question. But in terms of preparing, you go to B and C and D and E, and you give some thought to them. And then you think down the road, you don't have to do it now, but down the road, when you're taking this test, you're going to pick A. You're not going to read B, C, D, or A. All right. So I want you to get in here, try this, and you stay until you understand, unless you can't understand. Question number 2. The issue raised here, again, top right-hand side, is I'm looking for an assumption, and more specifically, a necessary assumption, because that's the way it's phrased. Now, that requires me to understand an assumption and what the role of assumptions are in arguments. And in law, assumptions are things you take for granted, and you don't take a whole lot for granted, at least not from lack of effort. Okay, here. So I'm informed that there's a large number of drivers routinely violate highway speed limits. You stop. That's given to you as a fact. Okay, next sentence. Since driving at speeds that exceed posted limits is a significant factor in most accidents, and there's a comma there, so you can hold, so you say, okay, well, now hang on a second. So I'm informed here that driving at speeds that exceed the speed limit, right, is a significant factor in most, again, the word most is important, in most accidents. Okay, that's now, I'm giving that as a fact. Since that is the case, installing devices in all cars that prevent those cars from traveling faster than the speed limit would prevent most accidents. A lot of words. They're not hard words. They're familiar words, but they're a lot of words. So you slow down. Okay. So the last sentence contains both the reasoning, which is introduced by that word since, which means because, and the actual conclusion, which is, it begins with the word installing. It's the second clause, installing devices. So that's the recommendation. The recommendation is, hey, we've got this problem, right? So the recommendation is, let's install devices in the car. And what do devices do? Well, they prevent the car from traveling faster than, say, 65, whatever the speed limit is. And the conclusion is that would prevent most accidents. And okay, well, for that to be the case, that for that change to result in preventing most accidents, the change would have to make a positive difference. I mean, if you left things alone, things would be worse, according to this argument. So a couple of things, jump out at me here. Haven't you assumed? So I put this device in my car, right, and I'm trying to get it to go faster. I'm trying to get it to go faster, and I can't. Wouldn't it be fair to say that there really would, you couldn't have a lot of occasions in which I would need to speed up to avoid an accident, right? I mean, isn't the assumption here that pretty much, at least not on a regular basis, you don't need to speed up to avoid an accident? Because if you did need to speed up, you wouldn't be able to. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. But again, assumptions, there can only be one credited answer, because assumptions are, they're critical, they're essential, they're not permissive. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So A, is the assumption that a person need not be a trained mechanic to install the device properly. It's just, go away. B, most accidents are caused by inexperienced driver. Again, they're just inviting you to bring in outside information. That's got nothing to do with this argument. No. C, a driver seldom needs to exceed the speed limit to avoid an accident when none of the other drivers involved are violating the speed limit. And that's the answer. That's what you said. That's what you're assuming, right? You're assuming I don't have to speed up to avoid an accident. And if I were to keep reading past there, D, most drivers who exceed the speed limit do so unintentionally. It doesn't matter whether they're doing it intentionally or not. They're exceeding the speed limit. And E, I'm scrolling down here. Even if the speed limit violations were increased, the number of such violations would still not be reduced. Well, that may be the case, but that's not the argument. So again, you want to stay with this, you want to work it. The learning here comes from the commitment to understand the particular argument. Again, so long as the vocabulary is there and you can understand the argument, which is the rule. If you cannot understand the argument, right? We're talking about altruism in the valueless society, and you're saying, I have no clue what the son of a bitch just wrote. Then no, get out of there. But here, yeah, you stay and you work it and understand, try to work that brain to have the answer in advance. If I look here at question number 3, and it's a little bit wordy here. It says the statement above, if true, provides the most support for which of the following conclusions. So you stop for a second and say, what is the issue? Well, the issue is that they want me to draw a conclusion. So I'm going to draw my own conclusion, right? And then compare it to the answer choices, which represent the author's conclusion. Okay, so they're going to give me a chain of evidence from which, before I ever look at the answer choices, I'm going to say, well, here's where I kind of think they're going. Here we go. In a recession, a decrease in consumer spending causes many businesses to lay off workers or even to close. Again, you're reading textually, you stop. So whether you have a background in economics or not, you don't need a background in economics. You're being informed, right? That this is what happens during a recession. And you say, well, what happens? There's a decrease in customer spending, and that causes businesses to lay off workers or even close. One, the other, or both. Next sentence. Now, workers who lose their jobs in a recession usually cannot find new jobs. Okay, so now these two sentences connect, and folks who are laid off um, have trouble finding a new job. Next sentence. The result is an increase in the number of people who are jobless, and that kind of makes sense. So you're following the chain, and again, they could have made this a sufficient assumption. They're just connecting all this. So you should be able to go now to the premise that the number of people who are jobless will increase during a recession. Next sentence. Recovery from a recession is defined by an interest in an increase in consumer spending and an expansion of business activity that creates a need for additional workers. So in this sentence, we're informed what defines a recovery, right? So we started off with what defines a recession. Now we're saying, the recovery, when you have the recovery, what do you see? You see an increase in consumer spending and an expansion of the business activity, and that creates a need for new workers. But business people generally have little confidence in the economy after a recession, and therefore delay hiring additional workers as long as possible. And so this final sentence says, so, we're in a recovery, but at the beginning of that recovery, business people generally don't have a lot of confidence in what's going on and delay hiring workers. And you say, okay, from those facts, what is someone likely to conclude? And, I'll read the answer choices. It does seem to me this is going to that kind of that last sentence, that the thing that's not explained here is, okay, there's a delay in hiring workers. So what's the consequence of the delay in hiring workers as long as possible? Well, the consequence is that then during a recovery, right, you're going to have people remain out of work, even though the recovery itself is underway, something like that. But they've got to be in that ballpark. Read textually. So now let me see what I have here. A, recessions are usually caused by a decrease in business people's confidence in the economy. Well, that's not anything this argument informed me. This argument informed me that business people's confidence in the economy have occurred actually during the recovery, right? Not during the recession, during the recovery. So again, you can infer that, but it's outside the contours of the evidence. This is in law. All you have is a law. You with me? It's called the four corners of the evidence. The four corners of this evidence, is that it's that little box. That's it. You got nothing else. And what you can infer from that. But here, this is not about just to infer, it's to draw the conclusion that follows from this evidence. And A, to me, is not it. A is not it. You have to infer A, and there's nothing in this that permits you in this world to infer A. B, government intervention is required in order for an economy to recover from recession. Again, they're inviting you to bring in outside information. That may be your position, and it may or may not be correct, but it may be your position. That's not this argument. C, employees of businesses that close during a recession make up the majority of workers who lose their jobs during that recession. And again, you that may be your view, but that is not what this argument states. This argument does nowhere does this argument hold that during the recession, that's the first part, right? A majority of the workers who lose their jobs are employees of those businesses. That's not what it says. If you actually go back, and it says, you know, there's nothing about the majority thing, right? There's, yeah, this is businesses will lay off or close, but it doesn't say how many businesses. So again, this reading textually is saying that's not what it really said. I have to read that in, that it's a majority of workers who lose their job that way, and I don't know that. D, sometimes recovery from a recession does not promptly result in a decrease in the number of people who are jobless. And of course, that's the answer. That's, if they had another sentence, that's how it would read. And again, you're trying to make this fluid, lose the resistance. A practice and practice and practice, and you're practicing IRAC. And finally, E, workers who lose their jobs during a recession are likely to get equally good jobs when the economy recovers. And honestly, I have no clue why anybody would pick E other than there's no F. So I'm going to stop there because I just want to give you a taste. But this is what you should be doing. Maybe you should do it the way I'm doing it, right? Which is, go on Zoom and tape yourself and then play it back, or get in that study group and have the study group do it together. I think that'd be very creative. And share your videos back and forth, have robust conversations, and then, get your ass into the class and talk to me. So, okay, well, I'll see you in a little bit, but that's we'll hold here for now.